and I want to welcome everyone to the Source Radio Jazz Confusion Power Hour. And we call it confusion for a reason. We like to look at every aspect of jazz crossover, jazz gospel, jazz reggae, smooth jazz, jazz country. We've seen that emerging in the past few years, jazz rock. We're really interested in keeping jazz alive and keeping it relevant. So that's why we have Source Radio and we play jazz 24/7. And we have a special feature, which you're about to see, called the Power Hour. And we've had some amazing guests on the Power Hour. We have an amazing guest for you today, too. And the purpose of the Power Hour is an in-depth discussion. We'll play some of the music from these phenomenal artists, but it's an in-depth discussion to try to get behind the mind, to find out, what's the method to the madness? How does a band, for example, like the band we're going to be talking about today, Pieces of a Dream, which originated smooth jazz back in the 1970s, how does a band stay relevant and turn out a body of work that they've turned out that have always been near the top of the charts? So without further ado, let me bring up somebody I've known for quite some time, and I'm so excited to have him on my show. It's Curtis Harmon, from one of the co-founders of Pieces of a Dream. Curtis, how are you?
Hey Mel, how you doing? I have to admit, I like your backstage, man. It looks just like my studio.
I'm glad you like it.
The home.
Look, I want to tell you, even though I've known you for quite a while, I want to tell you how honored I am that you're on the show today because, as far as drummers go within jazz, you're really legendary, and you maintain your relevance over all these years. So I really appreciate you being here. I want you to know that.
Oh, thank you, Mel. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me too. It's always a pleasure talking to people, and because I know people have a lot of questions about our band and about us individually, and so sometimes we like to make those things known.
Exactly. And I want your fans and also listeners who may be young people who may be hearing you for the first time and hearing some of your music today. I want to bring to them the fact that today's music, if you really dig deep enough, it goes back years, and it didn't just come out of nowhere. And there are other relevant young artists, say like John Batiste, who are really, sampling and making a lot of the old music and jazz relevant today.
We've been sampled so many times, man. I can't
exactly. And that's what makes music alive. People that do covers. A lot of people say, well, they're just covers, but covers keep music alive. It keeps the past current. So again, we have so much to talk about. Let's start off talking about your recent release. Why don't you tell me about it? Was it a collaboration with James? That's James Lloyd, your co-partner and co-founder and keyboard player. Tell me about your latest.
It was brought about during COVID. First of all, when COVID first started, it was actually about time for us to release or start working on another CD or another project. And COVID actually gave us a lot of time to do that because you couldn't really go anywhere, you couldn't do anything, So we put a lot of time in the studio during that time, and through some of the stuff we did on our own, and some of the stuff we're able to collaborate, through Zoom, basically. So we held some live studio sessions through Zoom, and the rest we kind of basically did on our own in our own studios, because each one of the band members pretty much has his own studio. So, but this album was a long time coming in the making, because I guess this album kind of brought a different side of us, because we were able to, through technology, and updated sounds and all kind of different things that we've been able to put in our studios, we've been able to kind of stay current with what we hear on the radio, R&B wise and jazz wise, basically, because we listen to Watercolors, and I also listen to uh one of the R&B stations on Sirius XM, and I also listen to the gospel station on Sirius, the Kurt Franklin gospel station. So I kind of pull my music from a whole lot of different sources. But I got together with my saxophonist Tony Watson Jr. and our guitarist Chris Harris on a couple of songs, and things just started you know getting real easy to do as far as recording with the other guys.
Terrific. All right, let me play one of the single that came off there, "In Too Deep."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me play that for everybody, and then you can tell me about it. That
Okay,
particular song.
sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow, that's great. I love it. I have a whole bunch of questions I want to ask you about that. Yeah,
There's a lot to tell about that song too.
exactly. First of all, why don't you tell me which band members were playing on this track?
Okay, Tony Watson Jr. sax, James keyboards, David Dyson on bass, and there's a kid. Man, I gotta see if I can pull his name up.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean.
No, because there's a young man who's playing trumpet on that. The high notes, all of the high notes are this guy. And I gotta look up his name, and
Okay, that's okay.
But when I first started writing this song, I wanted to do something with a nice, almost like an Earth, Wind, and Fire Tower of Power type horn section.
Yeah.
And so this song was my first attempt at writing a horn section by myself. So,
wow, okay.
And I was having so much fun writing this. David Dyson wrote the groove part where the saxophone is soloing. I was writing, I was writing a song, and I was like, this needs something, it needs another part, to go into. And so he sent me this couple of different bass lines, and I really liked the one, and started molding and shaping that bass line into a whole musical section. And afterwards, after kind of completing the writing part of the song, I could not come up with a melody. For some reason, I was just stumped right at the point of completing the track. And so I sent the song to James. I said, listen, man, I'm having a problem coming up with a melody, a verse, verse and bridge melodies for this. And so I sent it to him. So in about 3 or 4 days, he sent it back to me with the melody on it. And I really liked it. So I said, okay, so how do you see this going? He said, well, the saxophone is going to play the bridge melody. He's going to do the verses, and then, they're going to split the solo parts. So he helped me put it together. And then so the song came out really nice. So I sent it to Martin Walters down in Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. He lives in Kentucky. He's the one that mixes and masters our stuff. And he was listening to the song. He called me and said, listen, man, the horn section on this is killing. But I got a kid, man, that could put all the high notes on the brass for you. Right?
That's great.
And at first I was like, because as an artist, sometimes you don't want anybody really tampering.
That's right.
Stuff, And so he said, look, let me work with it. And if you don't like it, we'll just take it off. So he got the kid. This is a college guy. This is a college kid. I can't remember his name, but
it's okay.
But I want to give him props, because I want to give him the props, man. He did an excellent job. When I got the song back, when I heard it, man, the brass was so much more brighter. The horn sections were so much brighter, man. I was loving it. I was like, Mark, where'd you find this guy from? He said, he's one of my students, man.
Wow.
So I was like, wow. And then the young man emailed me a letter and thanking me for allowing him to be on the record. So I told him, this is my first attempt at a horn section. He said, man, you got to be kidding me. He said, you sound like you've been doing this for a while.
That was hot.
I told him, I said, listen, if I do another one like this, I'm definitely going to have you on it, because, man, you really did your thing. So I really appreciated what he had to add to the horn parts on that song. And I like to write stuff that's not just exciting, but stuff that I think we're going to have fun playing in concert, and that's one of the songs that, we got to do in concert a few times, and we had so much fun doing it, man. it was just a blessing.
You know, when I heard this song for the first time, I thought of Tower of Power, but I also thought
Mhm.
about Chicago too.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
with
Okay.
with those really really high horns.
Hmm.
And I right away I heard the trumpet. But what I was wondering about was I thought Tony might have created this because I know you're part of the rhythm section,
Hmm.
but I didn't know that you write horn sections.
No, well, actually, and I played a lot of the. Actually, James only played the. Well, he played the piano part and one other synth part. All the other keyboards are me.
Oh, you did the keyboards?
Hmm.
Wow. You see, you're so multifaceted. I don't. Some of this I didn't even know.
Well,
That's great.
my grandfather was a music professor at Temple University. I'm actually third generation musician. My father and grandfather both played keyboard instruments. My father and grandfather both played vibes and piano. And one day I'm riding in the car with my grandfather, and I mean I happened to just to take up the drums because I liked. I saw Bobby Durham, who was Ella Fitzgerald's drummer, and also he played with my father a couple of times in my
Oh, okay.
father's band. And when I saw some of the stuff he did, I was in awe of the things he was doing on the drum set. And my first instrument that I really wanted to play was guitar. I could not get my fingers to do what I wanted them to do. I just could not get my fingers to move the way I wanted them. So, but I had the dexterity and the coordination for drums. So I started playing drums. Actually, I started beating on my little brother's high chair when I was about 8 years old, and on my mother's pots and pans and stuff with her good silver. And my mother told my father, "Look, you better get him a drum set before I kill you both." So he got me a toy drum set, and I tore that all up. So then when I turned 12, he got me a real drum kit. And man, I'll never forget it because it was a black leather pearl set.
Oh, wow.
And I had never seen a leather drum set before.
Really?
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but my grandfather asked me, he said, "Listen, what do you really want to do with your music?" And at that time, I was taking harmony and theory from him. And I realized that I hadn't really thought about it because, I was just having fun playing drums. And he said, "Do you want to write music? Do you want to, be able to, I mean, when I say write, not just put it in a computer, but actually write it on sheet paper too, and and play other instruments, So I really thought about it, and I said, "Yeah, I've really got to broaden my spectrum of what I'm able to do with music." So I took piano lessons from him, took harmony and theory, and really got a feel for intervals and chord changes and really what music was about. And I don't want to get ahead of myself or ahead of you on
That's
what you
okay.
want to ask, but Grover taught us a lot about music too.
That's Grover Washington Jr.
Yeah, Grover
Right?
Washington Jr.
Yeah.
He was instrumental in getting us our first record deal and produced our first 3 albums. But he taught us how to let music breathe, and not, clutter up music with a bunch of notes all the time. Sometimes you got to be able to let the groove shine through, the background music shine through, and not act like you're being paid by the note, not play like you're being paid by the note. So,
That reminds me of Amadeus, the line in Amadeus, the
you're
movie,
right.
where Salieri, I can't think of his
Mhm.
exact name, but he confronts Mozart and after a concert, and Mozart asked him what he thinks, and he said, "Too many notes."
Too many
And
notes.
Mozart
Yep.
and Mozart and Mozart said, "Which one should I take out?"
Maybe about 500 of them, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I
Right.
understand what you're saying. The music can't be cluttered, and a lot of
Mhm.
times it is too cluttered.
Yeah, or
People.
you actually lose the feeling of what the actual song is about. You
Yeah,
know.
people. I know musicians are sometimes afraid of space. They're
Hmm.
afraid that something's not happening.
Sometimes
You
they
know,
can be,
yeah,
but Grover
yeah,
Grover was a great advocate of space in music, and so consequently, he passed that on to us. Another guy, Steve Gadd, who's one of my biggest idols and drummers. Great hands, right? But the biggest thing that I got from him was how to play pocket and not just be all over the place, because
yes.
if you can make somebody's head bob back and forth like that, then the drummer has accomplished his job.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I'm going to compliment you. Your drumming is so precise, and it's quiet, but you can't miss it. It's there.
Thank you.
And that's not typical. Drummers overplay. They don't stay in the pocket. They don't understand the groove really. And
Hmm.
and the way it's magic the way you can be heard but not seen.
Hmm.
And that's what you do so well. And that's been a hallmark of pieces. The rhythm section has always been phenomenal.
Well, thank
You
you,
know.
thank you. We
So
we kind of pride ourselves on our rhythm section, especially because we have we went out and got really top notch musicians. From our saxophonists to our guitarists to our bass player, our percussionist, Alex Simon, real another top notch player. Man,
yeah.
and we pride ourselves on being one of the top 5 bands in the country.
Oh,
So
definitely. Yeah.
and it's people like you and our fans and our and it that's what really keeps us relevant, in this genre of music. you know
Let me stick to in too deep for a second. How do you determine? I'm just curious, like the tempo. That that was to me that's a little unusual tempo for a pieces track. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I
I
heard it.
changed it. I changed the tempo of that song too, like about 2 times before I decided on how fast or how slow it should be. um the first tempo was too slow, then I sped it up, and then that tempo was too fast. So I said, okay, let me split the difference here, and that's the tempo I ended up with. So
So that's how you do it, huh?
yeah, so it's about at I think a 110
Yeah, it's
meter.
yeah, it sounds like
So
yeah.
yeah, and I find that to be a comfortable tempo because number one, it's not too fast. It's a danceable tempo. If people so choose to dance, you know what I mean, to whatever we write. I find 110 to be a real comfortable dance tempo. So that's a tempo that I've used a few times.
Yeah,
Um,
for the kind of horn track that you wanted to
mhm.
have in there, that was perfect.
Right, and because of the what the endings sound like, so I didn't want that the tempo makes that line gives it a perfect personality.
Yes,
So it's not sometimes all about the music all the time too. It's about how it's played. How
definitely.
fast or slow it is, how soft or loud it is. There's so many different facets in writing and playing music. It has to show personality. It has to have its own image. you know
Yeah,
and that's what makes that's what can separate your writing from everybody else's.
yeah, no question about it. Definitely. So let me just go back a little bit. You were talking about the origins of how you came to play drums and got
Mhm.
interested in music, and you're a third generation musician. How did you meet James? And when did you guys form pieces? And tell us about the origins a little bit.
Okay, we both went to uh, Ada H. Lewis Middle School in Philadelphia. Um, and the school had a music program, and I was already part of the junior high jazz band at that point. Um, and the jazz band was led by a well-known saxophonist around Philadelphia named Tony Williams. A lot of people confuse him with the drummer Tony Williams.
That's what I thought about when you mentioned
No,
that.
yeah, so they say he was a saxophonist, and man, he played his behind off, really. Um, James came in one day we were having practice, and he was playing for the orchestra teacher, our orchestra conductor, and he was playing, if I'm not mistaken, first he played Charlie Brown, a theme from Charlie Brown,
Yeah.
and then he played "Love Will Keep Us Together" by Captain and Tennille.
Yeah.
And he was 11 years old at the time. Man, he wore the piano out, dude. I mean, he really did his thing, and we were just standing there looking at him in awe. So he joined the jazz band, and along with myself and our bassist Cedric Napoleon, our original bassist Cedric Napoleon, we kind of broke off from the jazz band to do a school talent show.
Okay.
And we had three horn players with us at that time, and we ended up doing "Reasons" by Earth, Wind and Fire and "Happy Music" by
Right.
Donald Byrd and the Blackbird, right? And we ended up taking third place. We lost out to a dance routine and a Billie Holiday impression. But the crowd really loved us. They actually, if we had known we were being judged on the first song, we would have actually played "Happy Music" first.
First, yeah.
Yeah, but we ended up staying together. The three horn players kind of dropped off one by one for whatever reasons, and then we were left with James, myself, and Cedric Napoleon as a rhythm section. And so we actually started going over my house and kind of practicing, just messing around. And my father took an interest in us. Danny Harmon took an interest in us and sat us down and had us listening to people like the Three Sounds, NJQs, Milt Jackson, Oscar Peterson, Ahmed Jamal, Bobby Hutcherson, Count Basie, Duke Ellington's band, just some real straight ahead jazz.
Right.
And so because of that, excuse me, we learned how to swing, play, and really, I mean, at one point they said if we were about, I guess we were about 12 and 14, they said if you closed your eyes, you could not tell that was kids playing.
Well, sure.
We sounded like we were 40 years old. So my father started taking us on his gigs, and we would actually play, like he would play dinner dances and little clubs in Philadelphia, all around Philadelphia, and we would do the intermissions. And and when he told it, he would say it got so that people wanted to hear more of us than his band. So he started managing us and getting us our own gigs, and we would end up doing dinner dances and stuff because, when people were eating and drinking and stuff, after they finished eating and drinking and having their, meeting, because we would do stuff like for conventions and stuff like that. So after they finished talking, they would want to dance and stuff like that. So we, given our ages, we were able to play some of the top 40 stuff, for Earth, Wind and Fire, the Commodores, Hall and Oates, and whatever was top 40 back then. And during dinner stuff, we were able to, play swing stuff and soft ballads and stuff like that. So we were very versatile. So we ended up being on a TV show called City Lights and becoming the house band for the show. And Grover was one of the talent on the show. And so when he came in, he brought a track to play to. I think it was Wine Light. I do believe it was Wine Light, or either Let It Flow. And so he saw us play, said, wait a minute, I want to play with them. So he asked us, did we know Mr. Magic? Of course we did. So we ended up doing that one. And I think we did Wine Light with him. and man, he was blown away. So we ended up doing the Bijou Cafe not too long after that, where he did his live album. And he showed up and surprised everybody and played with us. And then he announced that he was just starting a production company, and we were his first product.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. But before we became Pieces of a Dream, we went through a whole array of different names, man. We were first Galaxy, then Touch of Class, then Classic Touch, Sound Unlimited Part 2. And somebody had all of those names, man. So
yeah.
We ended up with Pieces of a Dream. My stepmother, who was a big Stanley Turrentine fan, listened to Stanley Turrentine every Saturday. I woke up to that every Saturday while she was vacuuming, and that song "Pieces of Dream."
Dream, yep.
And so she thought there was first when she named us that, we didn't like it because we thought it was too wordy, because we used to names like Gap Band, Commodores, those really short to the point names. But Pieces of a Dream caught on and just became a household word in Philadelphia with everybody. She thought there was 3 guys looking for a musical dream, and we made up the pieces.
It's interesting. One of my friends is Larry Dodson from the Bouquets, and he told me that basically, when they were with Stax, and Otis Redding came in, heard them play, and said, "That's my band."
Wow.
And unfortunately for the tragic death, but
right.
But the fact, that's the way it happened. It's not much different from you with Grover. Right. Sometimes it's serendipitous, right time, right place.
Yeah, exactly. I was just getting ready to say that, and it's just. I mean, Grover was definitely a blessing in our lives. Through our God-given talent, we've been able to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. I've always said fate doesn't happen in a vacuum.
right.
You gotta have talent, or it's not going to happen, no matter where you are, or eventually, So
it's funny. My pastor always says, "What God has for you is for you." So
exactly. Let's talk about. You had such an illustrious career. I do have a song I wanted to play that features you as a drum solo. So maybe I can play that, and then you can talk about that song a little bit too before we get on to other things. Terrific.
Sure.
Let me pull that up. It's called Fiesta. Am I correct?
It's called A Pieces Fiesta.
A Pieces Fiesta. Thank you.
Yeah, it's from the On Another Note out CD.
And when was that done? Roughly.
That was the one before the one that's out now. That was the one before Fired Up. So that was probably about 2017, 2018, I think, maybe.
Okay. Let's listen to it, and then we can talk about it. Wow. Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you, thank you.
So who wrote that one?
I did. me,
There you go.
me and my sax player Tony Watson Jr.
That's great. I love that beat. That's really
Thank you so much. Thank you.
that,
That one was another one that I kind of envisioned us playing on stage, and possibly even as like an opening song to the concert. But I'm a fan of Latin music, so I always have like something that sounds Latin or island flavor on like for the last, I guess, 4 or 5 CDs, and that was one that I think that's the most up tempo one I've done so far. And I just wanted to feature the guys, on a song that would be a lot of fun to play, and something that that I thought the audience would be able to get into.
yes, that's really great. When I was brought up in New York on Long Island, and one of my friends during college was Paul Simon, and
Oh, oh wow.
yeah,
Okay.
and when he did Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard, he started to
Mhm.
experiment with Latin. Then he did Rhythm of the Saints,
Right.
and I've always been in love with that kind of music also. So I share your enthusiasm for it. It's so vibrant and it's so rich.
That
You
was
know,
another one. I like the I was kind of proud of the string section on that one.
it was
'Cause
excellent. Yeah.
I like doing string stuff too. So horn sections, string sections, the rhythm section, all this kind of my favorite stuff to kind of like mold and shape,
You
as I
see,
go
this is part of the reason, Curtis. I'm so glad to have you on because, so many drummers like Phil Collins and more than just drummers
along.
like and they have an appreciation for strings and horns and and
Hmm.
they step outside themselves to really contribute so much more to the richness of the music. So
Oh, thank you, thank you.
yeah, it's a real talent and it's very rare. You know, I know how great pieces. I've heard you guys perform many times. Let me ask you this question: besides you and the band, what other smooth jazz band is out there that you think is really excellent? Which one would you name?
One we used to perform with a lot was Hiroshima.
Yes, yeah,
I really like their
love
sound.
them. Yeah,
Um, Spyro Gyra is another one.
yeah.
Really, really good. And matter of fact, I used to. Matter of fact, that bass player Scott Ambush used to play in pieces.
Oh, really? I
Uh,
didn't know.
yeah, he played in pieces for a few years. And let me see who else. There's a lot of them out there. There's a few of them out there. You have more these days. You have more smooth jazz artists than the smooth jazz bands.
Yes.
The smooth jazz bands are not as abundant as they used to be.
Are there any
Uh,
up and coming ones that you know of?
um, Not as bands. There's a lot. There are a few of their. More like single artists. You know. Right now, I'm working with Paula Atherton, who's a female saxophonist,
Mhm.
and she's. I think she's known. I don't know how well known she is, but we kind of met on I think Facebook, and we ended up writing. I ended up writing a song for her, and she's actually working. We kind of worked out some of the melody last night for the song. So that's one artist that I'm getting ready to produce that I'm producing and writing for. Um, and there's a couple. There's a young lady out of Texas, uh, and she's not. And she's actually an R&B artist though, Sydney Moreau, and I'm producing some things for her too. So I mean, I'm getting my hand in a little bit of everything. I also wrote my pastor's first CD,
Oh, wow. Great.
and we actually won the 2016 Radio Alliance Award for CD of the Year and Song of the Year.
That's fantastic. That's really great. One of the things that, we've been talking about throughout the show today is, your multi-instrumental talent of being able to, you know, play keyboards, write sections for
Mhm.
horns and strings. One of the things I've noticed about pieces over the years, occasionally you've had vocalists perform with you, and one of my friends, Mace's, performed with you, and and some
Mhm.
other people I know have. But you've been primarily instrumentalists, and you
Mhm.
know, why haven't you gravitated more towards having a vocalist, even if they perform only a couple of songs in your sets? Can you explain that? You know, talk about
Uh,
that a little.
you know, sometimes I want to put this delicately as possible. Um, Sometimes having a vocalist can be a blessing or not be a blessing. um, we had a vocalist one time who, I guess, I actually got a little ahead of herself, and on one show asked could it be her featuring Pieces of a Dream.
That's a little ahead of yourself. I kind of get you on that one.
And we've had a vocalist leave the show before the show was actually over. Some people wanted the encore. We wanted to bring him back for an encore. He was nowhere to be found.
Wow.
It's just
Okay.
we just had some problems with vocalists. But I mean, the songs themselves that they've sang, I mean, really, I mean, and these are people that can really sing too.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. I mean, when they're on stage doing their job, they're at the top of their game. It's just sometimes sometimes it could be a bit much, you know.
Right. So it wasn't really pieces that had the problem. It seems like it's the vocalist that had the problem.
I mean, we try to be as accommodating as
Yeah.
as we can be. But when you want somebody that you've hired to be your backup band, when they want you to be their backup band, then yeah, yeah.
I'm laughing because it's so outrageous. It's unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. It was like, really?
And then having somebody who won't come on for an encore. I mean, what is
Mm.
that about? Well,
He
and
dude was gone. He had left the place.
I guess an encore wasn't in his contract.
Mhm. And then it got to the point where me and James talked about it and said, you know what? Maybe we don't really need a vocalist. So and it's not like we wouldn't like to have one now, because sometimes, I mean, for right now, we're doing our own vocals.
Yeah.
Me and James sing 454. And Tony Watson does Rising to the Top. So we have our own in-house vocals too. So
Yeah. I
we've
was
also
thinking of
got
a featured vocal. Yeah, I was thinking. Sorry to interrupt. I was thinking of a
no,
featured vocalist. I know you guys do vocals.
mhm.
You know.
Yeah, we have also got a new female playing with us, Carolyn Brewer, out of the DC, Maryland area. And so she sings also. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so we got in-house vocals now. So and she plays keys also. So she has double duty.
I talked to you earlier before the show started about how many about your whole body of work. How many LPs have you put out there? I know you told me 25.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, that's amazing. That's like one every year and a half you can get back in the studio. Besides all
Yep.
the road tours, that's just a lot of work. And I respect that kind of body of work more than anything because It not only shows your dedication, but it also allows people to see the transitions you make as artists over the years. So when you look back at those 25 years, Curtis, which LP stands out as your sentimental favorite, the one that is closest to your heart?
Wow. Um, hmm. That's a good question.
I hope so.
Let me see. I mean, there are actually a couple of them.
Okay.
To tell you the truth.
Go ahead.
I would have to say that the very first one is one of them because, I mean, we were kids with our first single out. It's funny because we were washing our bass player's mother's car because we actually didn't have our own cars at that time. So she was loaning us the car for the night to go out, and so that was one of the stipulations. All right, you clean up my car, you can hold it, you can borrow it and go out, right? So we're cleaning the car, and all of a sudden, Warm Weather comes on the radio, and that was our very first single, Warm Weather, and we had never heard ourselves on the radio before.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's almost kind of like that. If you've ever seen the movie Five Heartbeats,
yes.
When they first heard the song, we were like, "Oh my God, that's us!" So that one kind of sticks out of my head for nostalgic reasons. Besides that, Grover produced us at that point. Somebody who was a legend.
Yes.
Was producing these three kids, and he pretty much treated us like we were his own kids. Yeah. Instilled in us the values of humility and, like I said, letting music breathe, and how to kind of carry ourselves on the road. You can be a star without acting like you can be of star quality, put it that way, without brushing people off. And acting, without being an obnoxious star that way. Grover taught us a lot about humility and how to deal with people in a way, in a light that they would like to see you, and how to be and being cordial. Everybody has a job and gets tired at times, and but in our line of work, it pays to be personable. No matter how tired you are, we've never seen Grover, not have time to talk to somebody.
That's great.
Or not so consequently, we try to follow that model and be as cordial and accommodating as possible. So and I think that has worked for us over the years and been a blessing to us because, it's funny. We were on the Tom Joyner cruise quite a few years back, and we were actually sitting out in a place where a whole lot of other people, a lot of the people who were just cruisers sat, and we were talking to everybody and joking around with everybody and having fun and stuff. And I heard one person say, that's so cool that they could just kind of sit out here and just be, regular people with us and just kind of laugh and joke with us and be, and I'll never forget she said that, and that kind of stayed with me, and it kind of helps me, be humble. It because the people that buy your records don't have to buy your records. The people that support you don't have to support you, and if they don't like you, they won't support you. So, it just,
what you're getting at, Curtis, is, obviously Pieces has a great reputation, so people know who you are. But what fans often want to find out is what you are.
Was what exactly?
Yeah, and that kind of humility, puts you, in their heart, more than in their ear.
Right. And that's where you want to be. You want to be in people's hearts.
Yeah. No, it's a really important insight. Let me ask you.
I think that's where we carry our fans too, right in our hearts.
Yeah.
So it makes us want to do right by them. It makes us want to work hard for them, and it makes us want to see smiles on their faces. Doing what we do is all about making people happy.
Like I
And
said, I've seen you guys in concert, and you interact with the crowd so much. You actually go down in the crowd and bring them into the music with you. So
Mhm.
it's obviously it's coming from your heart, not just your talent. And
Yes,
and having that kind of heart is part of your talent. So I think it says a lot about the band and about you too. You
thank you,
know, Let me ask you this question.
thank
There's been so many changes in the music industry, and also in the
you. Hmm.
styles of music and styles of jazz, and you
Hmm.
know, how have you maintained your relevancy all these years? Do you when you think about the changes in the music industry, forget the technological or the changes in the fact that radio and record labels don't dominate the way they used to. But when
Hmm.
you talk about the music and you see the changes in the music, do you focus on that when you're going to create a new album? Do you think about what's going on out there, or do you just write because you know what you want to do?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. We listen to what's going on out there. We listen to, and like I said, I listen to different types of music. So, and what I try to do is incorporate what I hear sometimes into what I want to project also.
Mm.
So it's about taking all of the elements that you can with not only with what you hear, but with what's available to you in your own studio and what's in your imagination, to put in a song. Because this really is all about using your imagination and
Yes.
to building music, making music and building songs. It's all about creation. So it's all about what's in your imagination and what you want your listeners to hear from you.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely, absolutely. You
so
know, um, just tell me this. Do you like the direction that the music industry has gone? For example, radio FM used to be so dominant, and it isn't the way it used to be. And record labels had A&R and developed, artists, and that's kind of gone for the most part. Do you urban music has taken over radio, and it's
mhm.
narrowed the range of music that's being played.
And I
Um,
think I think that was inevitable, to tell you the truth,
Go ahead.
because of the fact that remember, you used to have smooth jazz radio stations, right?
Exactly.
You used to have, I mean, if it wasn't for smooth jazz festivals and concerts and uh, the internet radio, smooth jazz cruises and stuff like that, this would probably be a dead art at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why? Why? Why do you think that? Why did that
Um,
happen?
I I think that I just think that it's not being pushed enough. We're not letting the next generation hear what it's all about, and we're not feeding it to them basically. Um, and I'm just speaking as like the general population of adults who listen to smooth jazz and who kind of grew up on smooth jazz, who grew up listening to people, groups like Pieces of a Dream, Spyro Gyra, Al Jarreau, Grover, Miles Davis, who else? Alex Bugnon, Marion Meadows, Najee, Gerald Albright, people like that. Um, the next generation only knows what it hears. So if there is no avenue to present this music, they're not going to hear it. So, radio today, I think there's even more gospel stations now than there is smooth jazz stations.
Oh yeah,
you
there
know,
are.
so, there's definitely more hip hop, R&B, country, um, rock, heavy metal, even classical, music. There's more stations that feed us those types of music than there is that feed smooth jazz, than that gives us smooth jazz. So, um, us as artists, smooth jazz artists, have to kind of try to get it to the next generation any way we can. by sometimes going to the schools and doing little seminars and
Mhm.
staying relevant on social media and stuff like that. So,
Do
and
do you think that has anything to do with the decline of the record industry? The labels.
well, if you look at the record industry as a whole, there have been so many cutbacks.
Right.
A lot of record labels now, especially smooth jazz labels, don't really have a big A&R department.
That's right.
So it's up to the artists themselves to promote
Yeah.
themselves, basically.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of artists have gone independent, as far as smooth jazz, and are doing their own CDs, and promoting them themselves, getting them pressed themselves, and doing basically everything themselves.
Yeah. You may not agree with me, Curtis, but I think streaming has is destroying the variety of music for a number of reasons. First of all, when an artist gets paid 0.008 cents per
Oh my
play,
goodness, yeah,
how can they make a living on that anymore? And so that's one issue. And the other issue is the technology that digital and digitizing the music for streaming, has really cut down on the dynamics of the music. I know that Neil Young has been really critical about this. He will not have his music streamed because he said it doesn't sound like it did an analog. It doesn't
yeah.
sound.
There are actually a few artists that feel that way. So,
Yeah, I don't.
but I feel two different ways about that. One way is what you just said, as far as so little it pays us. Um, However, because of technology and because of how youngsters have taken to technology and have learned to stream and download, we're getting streamed and downloaded by the younger generation.
Mhm.
So I can't really complain about that part of it. You know what I mean? So it's in the same instance, kind of financially raping us. It's still keeping us relevant, on the other hand, in the ears and eyes of the younger generation.
Well, like my mother used to tell me, you can't put relevance in the bank.
That's for sure. Well, it depends. It depends because that's why they have sound exchange now. So
Yeah,
because
yes,
those little downloads and streams, they add up,
yes,
and
yeah,
they add up to sometimes significant dollars, depending
yeah,
on your popularity.
yeah. Yeah. I just think for an up and coming, you know, smooth jazz band, it's a tough road
Yeah,
to hoe now.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's so dependent upon your business skills as well as your music skills.
Most definitely,
Yeah,
most
yeah.
definitely. And I actually thank God for my management too, because my manager Gar Roberts, he hustles to get us the gigs, man. He really does. So, we're able to play a lot of premium gigs and be in a lot of places that we normally would not be able to go to. So,
Yeah, I know Guy for a long time. He is wonderful.
yeah,
Another talent,
he's my boy.
another talented part of your team. Tell
Hmm.
me this. You guys now have been at it 47 years approximately.
Hmm.
Where do you go from here? What do you see in the next 5 years?
Well, James and I have talked about it. We're looking at almost the next few years. We're looking at a 50-year anniversary.
Yeah.
So we're trying to come up with something big for that one. So, because I don't know any group that's seen 50 years. Okay.
No,
So,
no.
so if we're blessed enough to see 50 years, I think we need to do something big for that. So, and we were actually thinking of maybe doing a concert and featuring some of the people that's been in and out of the group, and play music from the era that they've been in the group, you know but that could get into a very long concert. So,
Yeah, yeah. You might want to think about when you're talking about those musicians, your
mhm.
50th anniversary, having 50 musicians on your
Yeah,
on your
right.
CD.
Yeah, how about
Is
that?
Yeah,
um
bring
but
back
i
the
mean i
50.
mean we've got to probably do some kind of anniversary party or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're working on another CD now. We're working on the new CD now, um where we there's been talk about a book, audio book done on pieces of a
Oh,
dream.
Terrific.
And maybe even a movie. I don't know.
That's
things that have been kicked around. So
there should be a documentary, and it's the kind of thing that Netflix does and HBO does.
Mm-hmm.
There should be a documentary, especially the musical roots and the relevancy of so much during your careers.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a phenomenal documentary.
Yeah, I could see. Yeah, there's a lot of material to put in it. That's for sure.
Yeah,
over 50
definitely.
years, there's a lot of material to put in it.
Definitely.
So,
well, Curtis, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. It was an absolute pleasure listening to your music and listening to you. And,
Mel, it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we're gonna have you back. Put you up very soon as our featured artist. Also, we have more in store for you.
Thank you so much.
Let me bring up contacts. Why don't you talk about it? People want to get in contact with you for a gig. What do they do?
You can call our management, Gar Roberts, vegan management and entertainment at 410-963-3700. And you can also like our Facebook pages, like our Facebook page. We also have Instagram and Twitter, and our website, piecesofadream.net.
Terrific. Wonderful. Well, look, I'm looking forward to the next 50 years with you guys.
Well, I don't know if it'll be around that long, but we're going to give it a real good Boy Scouts try.
I'm sure you will. Well, Curtis, again, thank you so much. It was wonderful, and good luck to you, and stay well.
Thank you so much, Mel, for having me. And we'd like to thank all of our listeners, all of our radio personalities and our fans that keep Pieces of a Dream so relevant and have kept us relevant over 46 years now.
Yeah, here's a comment from I love this cut. That was what when they heard your Latin cut.
Yeah, that's my boy Steve. I know him. He's from the DC area.
You know him?
Baltimore area, actually.
Yeah, and
that's Carolyn. That's our keyboard player.
Yep.
Our new keyboard player.
Yeah. So some of your listeners that have been listening in. I just wanted to show everybody, that you got fans out there.
Well, thank you. We love our fans, definitely.
Wonderful. Again, take care of yourself. We'll talk again.
Thanks so much, Mel.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.